Trial against Richard Allen, accused Delphi murderer, going to be taking place, supposedly, in the coming weeks. Lots of action, I guess you could say, going on there. Lots of motions being presented. And, of course, it usually ends up with Judge Gull going, no, we're not going to listen to anything you have to say. It's kind of like the Wicked Witch, if you will. And it kind of looks like her a little bit, too. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, former prosecutor and defense attorney. One of the motions filed by Richard Allen's defense attorneys which suppressed the record of the police interrogation, arguing about Allen's civil rights being violated. He was not read his Miranda rights. And there just happens to be lots of pieces of the interview that don't exist anymore because they seem to like to edit video and then say, whoops, it's gone. What's your take on this of suppressing some of this? Because I could read that some of it could be somewhat helpful and some of it not so much. We'll get into that in a moment. But what's your initial reaction?
But my take is that if it were any other judge, they would be looking very closely at the pattern of discovery misconduct on behalf of the government, on videos that just disappear, parts that appear maybe edited out or at any rate are lost,
Mm-hmm.
that could have been helpful for the defense. And then when there's a pattern of that can tip the scales on some of these motions and cause a judge to suppress things. But like you said, I don't know about this judge.
Yeah, I feel like she's just kind of going and she's in her lane and that's her team no matter what, and not being extremely impartial like she should be. Kind of, more reason why if he is convicted, there'll probably be another trial. Um, let's talk about the confessions because that's an interesting piece to all of this. And if not suppressed, I don't see them necessarily being a bad thing for Richard Allen. And here's why. Because Richard Allen, yes, he confesses to many people, but he's also confessing to a lot of things that have nothing to do with the crime. He's talking about sexually assaulting one of the girls. He's talking about shooting one of them in the back, I believe. These are all things that did not happen. These were not pieces of the case at all. It really kind of paints a picture of someone who is making a confession, probably a false confession, and then lining it up with information that doesn't make sense. I mean, it almost paints this as a very delusional person that's going to confess, but then they're confessing and giving details that don't make sense at all, which I don't know. As a defense attorney, would that be more helpful than just running around saying, I did it with the extra context added to the equation?
Oh, totally. Because you can explain to the jury the erroneous nature of the confession by comparing it to the other things to which he confessed that are demonstrably untrue.
Hmm.
And you know what it feels like to me is just like a, a desperation on behalf of Richard Allen. He's kind of like, what can I tell y'all to just get me out of this? And maybe he's not the most sophisticated or savvy
Hmm.
person, and he's kind of just putting stuff out there and hoping that it changes the circumstances for him for the better.
Well, and at the beginning, there is record of him denying it all, saying, I had nothing to do with this. I'm not going to be your scapegoat. This is BS. But then as he's held in solitary confinement for a year, and people need to understand it's not even just that he's in solitary confinement. There's always somebody with Richard Allen. There's somebody that's there taunting. There's somebody there trying to get the confession out. They're trying to get something out of him. And when you're met with that every single day, and there's not a whole lot of rules as to what you can or cannot do or say in that sort of situation, and they're being denied, any sort of just basic human rights of here, like, let's let you have some sanity. Crazy things can happen. But that's something I don't think a lot of people understand, that is actually what was going on with Richard Allen. It goes on quite often with the people in these sort of situations. Is that something that the jury's going to be able to hear or understand of just how coercive this could have been to get those sort of confessions out of him?
Yeah, totally. And it almost like has a Guantanamo Bay vibe or something
Yes.
horrible where like they just try to beat him down psychologically, emotionally, and otherwise. And over time they get what they're seeking. But yeah, I think that the jury absolutely can hear about that, especially when defense is going to be challenging the validity of that confession and trying to explain to this jury exactly how it came to be. And this we there's stuff we know about in terms of those interactions
Mhm.
between the government and Richard Allen, and there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it into those reports. And I could only, fear what those interactions were like.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, there's so many things that we don't actually have record of. We have just either a written account or an oral account of something because they didn't take very good notes on much of anything. And it's like, well, was this just because they were idiots, or were they trying to suppress something? The bullet being an interesting piece of evidence that doesn't seem to have a chain of custody attached to it, and they're trying to argue that this was from Richard Allen's gun. On the surface, when you hear the government throwing their case out there, it's like, oh, wow, what is this? And then it's like, well, what's the chain of custody in the bullet? Oh, there isn't one. Um, yeah. How are they going to argue this case? How is the government going to argue this case other than he made a bunch of confessions? Oh, and by the way, the context of the confessions doesn't make any sense. And there's a bullet that's unspent that seems to be there, but that bullet could really have come from anywhere. Do they have a lot more up their sleeve that we are just unaware of right now?
I don't know that they do, Tony. I think they're going to go with, he was likely at the scene around the time that these girls disappeared. He gave these confessions, and there's this bullet.
Yeah.
I think that that might be all they have. And what the general public doesn't necessarily know is that ballistics isn't as much of a hard science as some folks might believe it to be. There's room for subjectivity
Mhm.
and personal opinion. And so I think even the ballistics part can be challenged by defense.
Yeah, there's a lot to be challenged and questioned. It's going to be interesting to see now how that all plays out here in the coming weeks. What other motions we have before then? Even if we do hit the trial date that they're shooting for of May 13th, do you think we're going to get there? Do you think it's going to be a May 13th hard start?
That's coming up fast,
Yeah.
man, and especially with these pivotal motions that have yet to be ruled on. Sometimes the ruling can change the trajectory of the case. Sometimes it opens up new investigative avenues. They're just things that can really change after that. And so, if I was a betting man, my money would not be on a May 2024 trial.
Wow. How far out do you think it may go?
I'm guessing late 2024
Mhm.
is where it could be, but then again, Judge Gold seems to be trotting forward, and so, but I'm guessing late 2024.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.